If you want to know how to turn this into this is the video for you. Recently, I was hiking and bounced up a man in the bush, and we got to talking, and he told me, you know, one of the ways he liked to use overripe breadfruit is to make breadfruit bread. I was like, what about breadfruit bread? That's something real good. He was like, yeah, just take out the pulp, mix it with the flour and whatnot, and you can make bread and bake and that kind of thing. So that sent me down a rabbit hole, and I went and literally bought breadfruit, cut breadfruit, and put it to overripe on purpose because I say I have to try this recipe and I have to perfect it. So I tried this a couple of times, messed around with the quantities of this ingredient and that ingredient, hydration and that kind of thing. And this recipe that I'm bringing to you here in this video is tried and tested. This is something you could take to the bank. It is a great way to utilize overripe breadfruit, making a breadfruit bread that is not just delicious, but obviously has all the nutritional benefits of breadfruit in it as well. So you could consider it a healthy loaf or healthier loaf. Definitely something that I think you would enjoy. So let me get into it. This is one for the books. So the first thing we want to do, obviously, is get the pulp out of the overripe breadfruit. So just gonna cut it down like this, bust it open, and it needs to be very, very ripe. Not halfway ripe, not just overripe, but it needs to be very mushy like this in order to do what we need it to do. So I'm gonna use my hands here, and you see this texture? This is the texture that we need. This is the level of overripe or the stage of overripeness that we need for this bread to be wonderful. Just go into your hands and take out pulp or the flesh. And one of the benefits of testing this recipe is that I get to explain the next step of the process in full detail. Now, as you can see here, the pulp is very fibrous because, as you know, breadfruit is a very fibrous fruit, very starchy, and the fibers have their own structure, which would be different to the structure of a bread when the gluten develops. So using it in this state as is will not allow for a homogeneous end product when you mix it with the flour. So what I did when I was testing the recipe is put the pulp into a food processor, blitz it, and break down the structure or the fibers in the breadfruit, which allowed it to incorporate better with the flour, which gave me a even more consistent dough, and that is what we want. So we're gonna put this into the food processor and blitz it and kind of, make it more smooth. And again, that would allow for better incorporation with the flour, would allow the yeast to work better in the dough, giving a better rise and an overall better end product. So let's do that. Just gonna put the pulp into the food processor, blitz this for about, I would say 30 seconds to a minute. Shouldn't take longer than that. So this is the consistency that we're looking for in terms of texture. You want something resembling a very thick pancake batter. So we're good to go here. So let's move on to bringing this dough together. Now, if you looked at my flour showdown video, you would know that the ibis came out on top, and this is my personal favorite local flour to use when making breads and pizza and that kind of thing. And I'm really glad that they came out with this baker's flour, premium grade, because it gives really good results. I tested this recipe using this, of course, and the results were excellent. So I'm really glad to have them on board as a sponsor, because this is nothing forced or nothing, fake. This is real thing here. The Ibis Baker's flour works really good with this recipe. So we're going in 3 cups of the Ibis Baker's flour. And of course, you always want to level off the top of your measuring cup when you're measuring flour and that kind of thing, because if it is mounded, then that's more than a cup, right? So Always be mindful of that. So we have 3 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of yeast, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and that's just to help the yeast, do its thing. 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And whisk this together, combine. Go in with 2 cups of our breadfruit pulp. And I'm going in with 1/3 of a cup of melted butter. Now, because the butter is melted, it is a bit warm, and that is going to help the yeast activate. If you're using anything like coconut oil or that kind of thing, I would suggest, giving it a little zap or warming it up a little bit so that the warmth will help the yeast activate. And now, obviously, you just want to go in with our hands and combine and bring this dough together. And you would realize that I haven't added any liquid to this, and that's because in my testing of this recipe, I realized that you really don't need to add water. The breadfruit pulp itself has enough water content in it to hydrate this dough sufficiently. So no need to add any additional liquid to this. Trust me, it will come together perfectly. So you just want to bring all the ingredients together in the bowl until it forms, a dough. And now you just want to transfer your dough to your work surface. And we're going to knead this for about 8 to 10 minutes until it forms a smooth dough. Alright, so our dough has been kneading for about 10 minutes. Just come together nicely. So I'm just going to place it in this bowl, cover it, and leave it to proof in a warm place until it has doubled in size. Alright, so our dough has doubled in size. So I'm just going to punch it down, deflate it, transfer it onto my work surface, flatten it out, so just rolling it onto itself and kind of pinching with every turn. Now you just want to form it into a nice smooth loaf. Just kind of cupping it under my hands like this to seal the seam on the bottom, and then just kind of rolling it out into a loaf. Using the smoothness of the surface to create a little tension on the skin of the dough. Pulling like so to create some tension on the top here as well. And then just kind of loosely rolling it and shaping it as we roll. I'm gonna lightly grease my loaf pan. I'm just gonna place our loaf in. Alright, so we're looking good here. So I'm just gonna let this proof again for about 20 minutes or so and allow it to double in size, and then we're gonna stick it in the oven at 350 degrees for about 25 minutes to about half an hour. Alright, so we out of the oven and we looking real good. I must say, we looking good. We have a nice little rise, nice color, nice crust to the top, and of course, we have to touch this with a little butter on top. That is just customary. Let me take it out of the bread pan. Nice. Brush it all around with the butter. Make sure I get a nice coating right around, not just the top. On the sides. And get a nice buttery crust right around the bread. Alright, so now for the hardest part of this whole process, and that is allowing it to cool for about 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so before we slice into it. That's the hardest part of this thing. So I'll be back to cut it open, give it a taste. Yeah man, we in a gear here. Alright, so I'll give the bread enough time to cool So no longer do we need to stand on ceremony. I'm just going to cut into this one time. Look at that. Perfect crumb structure. Perfectly soft and pillowy with a nice little crust on the outside. We looking good. Smelling divine. And now, it's just to dig in, you know? Just to dig in. Blowing my mind that you could take overripe breadfruit and make bread with it like this. Like, they're definitely getting the flavor of the breadfruit coming through, right through, just permeating the whole bread. And the salt that we added to the bread really accentuating the flavor of the breadfruit. So listen, this is something you have to try, you know. I don't have much words for this. You have to try this. If you have overripe breadfruit on hand, trust me, you need to try this. So I don't even think it have much more that I could say here. You just need to go out, get your Ibis baker's flour, get your overripe breadfruit, and make this bread. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, give it a share. If you do try the recipe, let me know how it turns out in the comment section. Hit me up online. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please take a moment to do so. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.